Chapter 936, Lu Shu's Plan. Zhang Weiyu and Lu Shu stood beside each other in front of the door of the discussion hall. They could hear the wails from inside. Zhang Weiyu said with a tinge of worry, "You are playing with fire. Great Lord, you underestimate the power of the aristocrats. They are only one group of aristocrats. If the other families come and talk to us, the trouble of the Weiwu army is naturally something that they have to resolve." "I am worried about this," said Lu Shu. "What if you cannot reach an agreement with the aristocrats?" Zhang Weiyu furrowed his eyebrows. "These aristocrats are very greedy. To them, they are high in position. How can a small leader of the Weiwu army like you talk to them? Thus, I think that the conditions that they offer us will be almost the same. Furthermore, you cannot possibly accept these conditions. What will you do then?" Lu Shu laughed buoyantly. "How long do you think this war will last for?" Zhang Weiyu thought about it and said, "From the ambition of the Black Feather Army, it is unlikely to end in 1 year. The Sword Hut selection will start in half a year. Do you think that these aristocrats will dare to provoke a disciple of the Sword Hut?" Zhang Weiyu was dumbfounded. He did not expect Lu Shu to already include this in his plan. The Sword Hut is extraordinary. Disciples of the Sword Hut will be under the command of the Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven will also treat them with due respect. The aristocrats would not dare to provoke them. Thus, before this war ends, the Black Feather Army could not defeat us. Then what can those aristocrats do?" Lu Shu smiled. "As long as the war does not end, no one will dare to move the Weiwu army. After the war ends, I might be a disciple of the Sword Hut. Then, who will dare to cause trouble for the Weiwu army? So you already had this idea. No wonder you dared to bring the Weiwu army out here and provoke the aristocrats." Zhang Weiyu sighed. "I haven't thought as far as you have. Allow me to ask you a serious question. Since when did you come up with this idea?" Lu Shu calmly said, "Just now. As expected, I can't think much of your planning activities." After he finished speaking, Zhang Weiyu turned and looked at the discussion hall. When he verified that Lu Yizhao and Li Haitan did not hear his conversation with Lu Shu, he could finally relax. But he agreed with Lu Shu's plan. If Lu Shu could become a disciple of the Sword Hut, then the problems facing the Weiwu army would no longer be problems. But Zhang Weiyu was puzzled. "But all the geniuses in this world will gather at the palace. Are you sure that you will be selected? Furthermore, no one knows what the second round of selection is like. How are you sure that you will be able to pass?" Lu Shu thought about it and said, "Have you ever thought of this? Although I don't know what the second round of selection is like, the Sword Hut only selects for people every year, right?" "That's right," said Zhang Weiyu. "If I cannot pass the second round, have you thought about this? If only 4 people are left to be selected, everyone would be able to pass, right?" Lu Shu asked. "Hold on. I know you are very strong now and have high combat power. But 16 people will go to the second round. You wouldn't even be able to touch them in the arena," explained Zhang Weiyu. Lu Shu was silent for 2 seconds. "Are you stopping me from defeating them in private?" "No." From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. Lu Shu sighed with emotion. Zhang Weiyu was so generous. He produced plenty of distress points for Lu Shu every day. When he returned to Earth, he would definitely give Zhang Weiyu some refresher fruits to eat. Although he did not know whether the fruits would be of any use to Zhang Weiyu, it was good enough to rid him of his current physique. On the other hand, Zhang Weiyu suddenly felt that the moment Lu Shu stepped into the palace would be a very interesting story. He did not know what would happen, but mysteriously, he was looking forward to it. But it was the Sword Hut. All the geniuses that Lu Shu would encounter would be the elites of each army. The aristocrats would also pay for their talented descendants to enter. They would all be experts that had been produced by a wealth of resources. Zhang Weiyu wanted to know what would happen when Lu Shu encountered them. The discussion hall had quietened down. Lu Shu walked in and heard the slaves beg, "Spare us, great lord. We have no autonomy over this. We have to return to our masters and report this before we can offer you new conditions. We were not threatening you. Please do not misunderstand." Lu Shu waved his hand. "Fine. Go back and tell your aristocrats that since the Weiwu army has been discarded, it is too early to share that piece of territory. If they want to work with the Weiwu army, I will have to see whether they are worthy. If they are not even able to defeat the Black Feather army, don't even think about pulling in the Weiwu army." Lu Shu's words were arrogant. He seemed to look down on the Black Feather army. The slaves did not dare to say anything. The Black Feather army had many elites, but they were viewed with disdain by the broken Weiwu army. Lu Shu met messengers from 7 aristocrats over 7 consecutive days. But no one was able to offer Lu Shu conditions that were attractive enough for him. Lu Shu was not in a rush to escape and seek refuge with anyone. He just wanted to go back. On the other hand, there would not be any large movements from the Black Feather army for a while. After all, if they continued to send people over, would they still be able to defend Weibei Pass? The aristocrats in the north region were still eyeing Weibei Pass. After the slaves returned, the aristocrats saw their badly battered appearances and their expressions darkened. The small leader of the Weiwu army thinks that he is secure with a strong backing, huh? What gives him the right? The slaves did their best to incite their owners. "Master, why don't we attack Black Feather army? If the Weiwu army was able to defeat the Black Feather army with so few people, the Black Feather army will not be as ferocious as we had thought. Once we have defeated the Black Feather army, we will deal with the Weiwu army. We can even send troops to surround and kill them. We will wipe them out in front of the Lord of Heaven." The aristocrat glanced at the slave who had spoken. "Go away, you useless thing. Do you think fighting is as easy as you say? I know how strong the Black Feather army. It is not that they are too weak. Now that the Weiwu army has a strong leader, they have become very powerful." The aristocrats were not dumb. They would not be fooled by their slaves either. They knew that if the Black Feather army was weak, they would not be able to take Weibei Pass and Liyang Pass. But the Weiwu army was far too strong. For a period of time, the news of the Weiwu army's transformation, as well as how they defeated the Black Feather army with their small size, slowly started to spread. In less than a month, even the aristocrats in the palace started to talk about this after their meals. These kinds of stories, where the weak became strong, would always be the topic of conversations. Thus, the Weiwu army grew famous. Chapter 937, New Bets in the Casino. When the story of the Weiwu army reached the palace, everyone treated it as an interesting piece of news that had nothing to do with them. After all, a long time had passed since the last battle in the palace. The war between the North region and the West region had started to spread throughout the universe. The strength that the Black Feather army had displayed on a strategic level made everyone interested. But the same Black Feather army was helpless against a small army made up of leftover soldiers. When those who knew about the situation talked about the Weiwu army, they would say, the Weiwu army was originally an army made up of roamers. People in the North region would note that they are very disorganized, but no one expected them to defeat the Black Feather army with just 3,000 people. These roamers do not dare to fight. They can only run away on the battlefield. I don't know how they became so strong. As for how weak the Weiwu army was in the past, everyone could easily paint a vivid picture of them. It was as if the weaker they described the Weiwu army as, the more dramatic this war would become. This was because the war had nothing to do with them. Thus, whether the war was right or wrong, as well as the victories and losses, were not important to them. Most importantly, none of this was important to them. The poems of the king was mostly read by the sons and daughters of rich aristocrats. As they read the poems of the king, they would pose as lovers of culture while admiring the fortresses. Very few people had actually been on a battlefield. In order to attract these rich customers, storytellers in tea houses and wine shops would talk about the hottest topics. In the largest wine shop in the palace, an old man sat on the stage and stroked his beard. The leader of the Weiwu army, Yi Xiaoming, held his halberd. "No, you're wrong." A young girl suddenly stood up. "My uncle went to the north region last month. He received news from the Black Feather Army that the leader of the Weiwu army is now a young man with the surname Liu. Furthermore, during the battle, he didn't use any halberd." The storytelling became very awkward. People who fabricated and exaggerated stories were most afraid that the audience would know the facts of the situation. How could a small storyteller like him go to the battlefield and do his research there? Under typical circumstances, the children in the palace would not know about these kinds of things. The aristocrats in the palace would not care about the small Weiwu army. Thus, their children did not have any sources of information. But this time, people cared about the situation, as the protagonist of the story, the Weiwu army, was worthy of dramatic action. It even became the laughingstock of the aristocrats. The storyteller hesitated. To this young lady who dared to ask, "What did you hear?" "Liu is a common surname here." "Do you know his actual name?" "I don't know his full name, but I know that he only fights using a tree branch." The young girl said in a grand manner, "I heard that the young man is good-looking and has achieved a high level of training. He is not like the geniuses in the place at all. They still have a bloodline." The children of the palace, who were observing by the side, were unhappy. How was the leader of the broken Weiwu army on the same level as them, the children of the palace? It was said that he was very good-looking. How good-looking could you be when you fought? Furthermore, it was said that he only used a tree branch to fight. If this was real, then he was very pretentious. There were countless geniuses in the palace who were pretentious. But the leader of the Weiwu army was the first to be as pretentious as to use a tree branch to fight. Did you think that you were the head of the sword hut? Overnight, all the storytellers in the palace changed their story. Lu Shu changed from a mighty warrior in an army to a figure with poetic flavor. In the same night, the young ladies in the palace started to wish for this young man. On the other hand, the males in the palace were all very unhappy with Lu Shu. If he came to the palace, they would teach him how to behave. Suddenly, there was a new bet in the palace casino. They bet whether the Weiwu army would be able to survive being surrounded by the Black Feather Army, how long the Weiwu army would be able to survive, and how many Black Feather Army soldiers the Weiwu army would be able to kill. There were all kinds of bets. Of course, the bookmakers decided the odds. At first, the news of the Weiwu army was only viral for a few days. But with these bets, it started to grow even more viral. The casino started to spread how weak the Weiwu army was, and how they had defeated the Black Feather Army by luck. After a large group of people placed their bets, they started to focus on news regarding the Weiwu army. They did not care about how strong or weak the Weiwu army actually was. They only cared about whether they won or lost the bet. Money talked. In order to ride on the viral wave, many casinos sent their rank 1 powers as scouts to obtain information at the same time. Then, they sent back magical objects with witchcraft in real time. The casinos then changed the odds accordingly. On one hand, the bookmakers wanted to obtain correct information. On the other hand, this was a method to disseminate information in real time selectively. This maintained the enthusiasm that the palace had towards the Weiwu army. The bookmakers in the casinos had even bribed the storytellers to organize a grand banquet. The scouts received training materials and flew to the north region. They estimated that they would arrive after 1 week. They started to spread the news. Everything was in its place and ready. The bookmakers in the casino were full of confidence. They were fired up. But on the 8th day, Some of the gambling dens received information that the scouts from the Song Ji gambling den had been captured by the Weiwu army. The gambling dens were dumbfounded. He was a rank 1. The Weiwu army was serious about capturing people. How did they catch him? Were you all crazy? You were fighting the Black Feather army, right? Why did you capture the scouts from the gambling dens? Some rank 1s tried to run away. They did not even want to fight. Now, they had been captured alive. Just how strong was the Weiwu army? How were they able to capture a rank 1? The gambling dens, who had been full of confidence, were left speechless. Their entertainers had indicated that they did not dare to approach the mountain where the Weiwu army was. They even ran dozens of kilometers away before they dared to do their search. The gambling dens suddenly understood that all of them had underestimated the Weiwu army. The Weiwu army was very ferocious. In the Qinglu Mountain, Lu Shu did not know that people in the palace had started to place bets on the Weiwu army. He simply looked at the young people in front of them cheerily. "Are you from the Black Feather army?" The young man shook his head. "I advise that you let me go. I am from the palace. If you treat me unfavorably, there will be unexpected outcomes." The scout from the Song Ji gambling den, Zhao Shuai, seemed to have lived for a very long time. To be honest, he did not expect to be captured alive either. He did not expect the Weiwu army to have for rank 1 experts either. He had just approached Qinglu Mountain when he was surrounded by the bishop, Anthony, Johnson, and Louis Zhao. What could he do? He was left in utter despair. Chapter 938, Collaborate to be the bookmaker. Lu Shu rose his eyebrows after hearing what Zhao Shuai said. What was meant by an unexpected outcome? He turned and smiled to Louis Zhao and Li Haitan. "He is threatening me." After his sentence, Louis Zhao and Li Haitan had surrounded Zhao Shuai. Johnson, the bishop and Anthony waited quietly underground and Zhao Shuai did not dare to move. "We can discuss this nicely," said Zhao Shuai. His initial intention was to scare the Weiwu army. After all, ordinary armies would not dare to offend them since they came from the palace. However, Zhao Shuai realized that the Weiwu army was different. They were serious about beating people up. However, Zhao Shuai did not understand why there were so many F*King rank 1 individuals in the Weiwu army. Lu Shu smiled. "Do you know how to discuss this nicely now?" Zhao Shuai nodded. "Yes." "You came from the palace?" asked Lu Shu. "Yes, I am the chief officer of the Song gambling den," explained Zhao Shuai. "As the gambling dens in the palace have placed bets on you, I am tasked with checking out the details so I can change the rates accordingly." Lu Shu was stunned. "Put a bet on us?" Why did the gambling dens of the palace care about the Weiwu army? "Yeah, I also F*King want to know why." "Hold on, don't hit me," said Zhao Shuai. "Now that the Weiwu army is famous, many of the people in the palace have their attention on you. The gambling den would definitely be interested since everyone would be interested in money, right?" Suddenly, Zhao Shuai said, "After I am captured, you can discuss about the ransom with the Song gambling den. They will be willing to pay a large sum of money." Lu Shu's eyes lit up. "How much?" "Millions of notes," said Zhao Shuai. Lu Shu immediately took note of an important point. There must be more than one gambling den in the palace. Did the other gambling dens also send people over? Zhao Shuai was stunned. What did Lu Shu want? Was he being serious? Did he want to capture others to exchange for ransom? Lu Shu made Zhao Shuai contact the Song gambling den from the palace so that his ransom could be delivered. After a long discussion between Zhao Shuai and the Song gambling den, they promised to pay the ransom 3 days later. The gambling den was not independent. The Song gambling den belonged to the Song aristocrat. He had other businesses all around the universe. That was the background of an aristocrat, a true aristocrat. Therefore, upon receiving the news, the boss of the Song business sent millions of notes over. The person in charge of the gambling den felt like breaking down as the den had lost a huge sum before they even started business. He did not understand why others had to capture the people of their gambling den, as all they did was to take a look at what was happening at Lu Shu's side. Lu Shu said happily, "Xiao Shuai, are you unhappy with being captured alone? Are you angry with the loss of money of the Song gambling den?" Xiao Shuai looked at Lu Shu and kept silent for a long while. "What benefits do I get?" "You get a share," Lu Shu said proudly. There were 4 rank 1 experts in the Weiwu army. However, according to Xiao Shuai, 5 rank 1 experts arrived. Therefore, Lu Shu was playing with fire because he would not be able to handle it if the 5 people sent as scouts teamed up against him. Even the Black Feather Army did not dare to anger the people sent as scouts. However, the Weiwu army triggered them. Xiao Shuai was wondering if any army dared to trigger them. To his horror, Weiwu army acted like bandits and captured the team without caring about their identity. However, Lu Shu thought that the 5 gambling dens were not united and therefore the 5 chief officers were not united too. If they were united, they would only send one of them over and did not need to pay the price of sending 5. Therefore, as long as he did not trigger too many people at once, he should be safe. In the worst-case scenario, he would force himself to break free from the shackles and eat the fruits. Lu Shu had already noticed that the shackles were loose. At this moment, the chief officers heard news that Xiao Shuai was safe because the gambling den had paid the ransom. This became a joke amongst the gambling dens. It was a huge joke because Xiao Shuai, the chief officer of the palace's gambling den, was caught by the Weiwu army. Xiao Shuai did not return to the palace after being released. Instead, he found a place nearby to rest and waited patiently. After a few days, news arrived saying that the chief officer of the Lin gambling den was also caught. Then, there was another sequence of events of asking for ransom and releasing the person. After another few days, the chief officer of the Yun gambling den also got caught. It was rumored that the chief officer of the Yun gambling den was about to leave when he was caught. However, he was forcefully caught again after he was more than 300 miles away from the mountain. He almost broke down at that moment. He did not manage to hide from danger after such a long time. The Weiwu army was incredible. After this happened, the other chief officers of the 2 gambling dens returned to the palace immediately. They would rather not do the business and protect their reputation. The experts in the gambling den came prepared and wanted to make use of this moment to get their money. However, the Weiwu army did not even bother to fight with the Black Feather army and was busy catching the chief officers of the gambling den. There were more than 5 gambling dens in the palace, but only the 5 of them sent their chief officers over. Therefore, when the chief officers got into trouble, the other gambling dens started to bet on who would be captured next. At this moment, the commander of the Black Feather Army was notified about this. He did not want to care about the uncontrollable Weiwu army, but he had to care about them, or he would not be able to advance to the north. However, the Weiwu army was capable of capturing rank 1 experts and this confused him. At this moment, another familiar-looking guest arrived at the Qinglu mountain. Lu Shu smiled as he looked at Xiao Shuai. "Why did you return?" Xiao Shuai said calmly, "I know you like to make money. Why don't we collaborate and become the bookmaker? Since the bets taken by the palace is becoming larger, the profits we could make out of this is immense." "I want 50%, said Lu Shu while smiling. "Pass it to me in the form of armor and weapons." The Song family were smart. After seeing how Lu Shu captured the chief officers to exchange for money, they knew that the Weiwu army would exchange their lives for money. Therefore, what was wrong with earning money together? Aristocrats only became aristocrats as they knew how to achieve a win-win outcome. Lu Shu, on the other hand, had been waiting for a long time. He wanted to see if anyone from the gambling dens were willing to collaborate with him. After the collaboration, the Weiwu army would have a say on who was the winner. However, he did not have a use for so many notes. Therefore, he asked for armor and weapons instead. Although he managed to obtain many weapons before this, the weapons were nothing special and that disappointed Lu Shu greatly. With the ordinary armor, Lu Shu began to think about the magical weapons. After all, the power of the Wei Wu army was still increasing and Lu Shu wanted to match their power with their weapons. He could get more benefits only after the Wei Wu army grew more powerful. Chapter 939, The Day When the Palace Bled. After the news of the chief officer of the gambling den being captured became widespread, everyone went wild. The Wei Wu army was so powerful. Even the Black Feather army would not dare to capture the chief officers in this manner, right? Moreover, the critical point was that after this event, everyone believed that the gambling dens were not affiliated with the Wei Wu army, as after all, none of the gambling dens would sacrifice their reputation for money. Therefore, the Wei Wu army was innocent and that attracted more people to place their bets as the gambling den was unable to control the outcome of the bet. After this event, everyone witnessed the power of the Wei Wu army and dared to place their bets. The Song Gambling Den asked people to place their bets regarding whether the Wei Wu army was daring to sacrifice their advantageous position in the territory so as to attack the Black Feather army from behind. Many people laughed. Although the Wei Wu army was powerful, the total strength of Black Feather army at the Wei Bei Pass was more than 20 times of that of the Wei Wu army. If the Wei Wu army wanted to fight based on their geographical position, they could give it a shot. The placing of bets definitely gave one the opportunity of earning money. If the Wei Wu army was in their right mind, they would definitely not exit from the mountains. In the end, after 3 days of attack on the Yunnan city by the Wei Wu army, the Black Feather army with 3,000 soldiers in the Yunnan city lost. Everyone who placed their bet on the fact that the Wei Wu army would not dare to leave the mountains were stunned. What the f***ck? Why did they leave the mountains? What benefits could attacking the Yunnan city bring to them? Why didn't they follow the rules? After a week, over 100 sets of armor were shipped to the Qinglu mountain and Lu Xiaoyu received all of them. Lu Shu took a look and was unhappy. The magical armors were similar to the ordinary ones. He had initially demanded for both armor and weapons from Zhao Shuai, but Zhao Shuai was only willing to give him the armor as weapons were more expensive and the gambling den was unable to afford it. This was different from what Lu Shu knew. By right, armor should cost a few times more than weapons. After Zhao Shuai's explanation, Lu Shu understood that weapons needed to resonate with spirit qi while armor only needed to be sturdy and able to withstand blows. In the Luniverse, there were very few weapons that could resonate well with spirit qi. Most of them were with the 4 lords of heaven and the king of gods. Therefore, the weapons were extremely expensive. At this moment, Zhao Shuai took out his saber in front of Lu Shu, implying that he could only use a mediocre weapon like the saber. Lu Shu was stunned for a moment. Wait a minute, looking at Zhao Shuai's saber which had a similar quality to the long spear at the remains in Beimeng, that was counted as a mediocre weapon? Then what about the trident that was better than the long spears? Why did the earth, which was lacking in spirit qi, have weapons which the Luniverse was lacking in? Was it on purpose or was it pure coincidence? However, Lu Shu did not force Zhao Shuai. The armor were good enough to increase the survival rate of the Wei Wu army. Initially, the Wei Wu army was already more powerful than the Black Feather army. With the magical armor, it was harder for them to die. They could do anything they wanted. Zhao Shuai smiled. The Song Gambling Den is sincere about collaborating with you, Commander. We look forward to working with you. Yes, said Lu Shu. I look forward to working with you. 3 days later, another bet was included in the Song Gambling Den. Within 1 week, the Wei Wu army would attack the Black Feather army several times. With more bets, the loss was greater. The genius, disciples and daughters of the aristocrats and the gamblers had learned their lesson. They began to study the loss and wanted to reduce the risk. Of course, the reduction of risk was within expectations. For example, someone bought all the bets for this round. He was clearly trying to use leverage to maximize returns. Everyone was extremely confident. Even if one lost, one would not suffer a huge loss, right? Perhaps everyone would earn instead. In the end, the Wei Wu army attacked the Black Feather army 21 times in the week. On average, they went out for an attack 3 times a day. No matter where they went, they attacked and left immediately and did not even bother about killing. The Black Feather army were extremely confused. One moment, they received the news from a horseman that Wei Wu army had arrived. In the next moment, they received another piece of news that the Wei Wu army left after killing 2 horsemen. What were they doing? The commander of the Black Feather army sitting in the tent was infuriated. The Wei Wu army was too arrogant. However, he did not dare to chase them. In the situation that the master was unable to participate in the battle, for rank 1, a group of rank 3 and rank 2 could not make any serious damages to the Black Feather army. Moreover, the Wei Wu army obtained over 100 sets of magical armor out of the blue. With these sets of magical armor, the soldiers did not suffer any injuries even after being attacked. The people who made bets in the palace were frustrated. What was the Wei Wu army up to? 21 attacks in a week? Were they mad? This was the first time in the history of the Luniverse when an army did such things. It was said that many gamblers stood at the side of the Longyin River and were going to jump at any moment. This time, the Song Gambling Den sent more than 800 sets of armor to the Qinglu Mountain, showing how much profits they had made. Lu Shu was exhilarated over the fact that although the Wei Wu army had stopped obtaining distress points from learning how to read, he obtained more distress points from the people who placed bets. Zhao Shuai was also very happy as he was the person who brought up the suggestion of collaborating with the Wei Wu army as the dealers, to the aristocrat of the Song family. Everyone made money and he could use better weapons too. After that, the Song Gambling Den started another bet. Would the Wei Wu army win or lose when they fought against the Black Feather army? This time, the other gambling dens had figured out the pattern and followed what the Song Gambling Den did. All the gambling dens placed slaves at the doors of the Song Gambling Den so they could adjust their rates accordingly to the Song Gambling Den. Suddenly, all the gambling dens in the palace followed the Song Gambling Den. The boss of the Song Gambling Den was grinning from ear to ear. What a profitable business! However, he had to discuss with each of the gambling dens. Although everyone could earn together, mimicking the Song Gambling Den would definitely reduce their profits. If everyone wanted to earn together, they had to split the profits. The Song Gambling Den also had to split the earnings with the Wei Wu army. After considering for several hours, the bosses of the various gambling dens all agreed. That was because if the Song Gambling Den were collaborating with the Wei Wu army, it would be extremely easy for the Song Gambling Den to go against the rest of the gambling dens. Therefore, harmony brings wealth. The entire palace thought that the Wei Wu army was powerful. Therefore, many people would place their bets on the Wei Wu army winning. There were no suspense at all. After all, the Wei Wu army was so powerful. In this round, both parties did not have much to lose. The gamblers realized that the dealers also agreed that the Wei Wu army had similar power as the Black Feather army. One army was powerful and one was superior in terms of manpower. Therefore, there was nothing fishy in this round. Even if there was, the dealer could not make much profits. In the end, on the second day, the Wei Wu army headed to Nanging City where the Black Feather army was stationed at and started the battle. Apart from the Wei Bei Pass and Liang Pass, Nanging City was the place where the most soldiers were stationed at. There were more than 10,000 soldiers. This time, the chief officer of the Song Gambling Den reported the situation real-time and all the gamblers became excited. It was rare for the gambling den to be so open. At the moment when the Wei Wu army and the Black Feather army were at a stalemate, the gambling den suddenly started another bet. How many Wei Wu army soldiers would die? This was a bet with a high loss rate. People who bet on 0 deaths would lose a certain amount of money, and people who bet on 1 to 100 deaths would lose another sum of money, and so on. All of the gambling dens of the palace were betting. Everyone placed bets, including the aristocrats. Nobody cared about winning or losing as they were having fun. After many people placed their bets, the Weiwu army suddenly retreated, and everyone began to keep track of how many people died from the Weiwu army. In the end, nobody died. Everyone was stunned. Almost all the other options had bets, but only a handful placed their bets on 0 deaths. Why? Weapons were merciless. How would there be a battle that involved 0 deaths? What kind of nonsense was it for the Weiwu army to not have any deaths? How did they do that? In fact, apart from Lu Yizhao, who was fighting with the rank 1 commander of the opponent, Lu Xiaoyu, Lu Shu, Anthony Johnson, and the bishop did nothing apart from saving people. Someone called this day the day where the palace bled. According to rumors, many gamblers jumped into the Longning River consecutively. At this point in time, everyone wanted to kill Lu Shu when they met in the palace. Chapter 940, The Panicky Commander of the Black Feather Army. The atmosphere on the Qinglu Mountain was joyful. Lu Yizhao and Li Haitan stood behind Lu Shu, and Li Haitan mumbled softly, "Can we really earn so much this time?" Lu Yizhao smiled and nodded. If what Zhao Shuai said was accurate, all the gambling dens in the palace participated and everyone in the palace placed their bets. We can definitely earn a crazy amount of money, not exaggerating at all. Why is the palace able to last until today? Do not underestimate its power. The palace, Li Haitan pondered over this word. Do we have the chance to visit the palace in the future? Yes, said Lu Yizhao firmly. At this moment, Zhao Shuai landed from the sky and Lu Shu went towards him, greeting him warmly, "Brother." Zhao Shuai was speechless. He realized that there was a pattern. When he could help Lu Shu earn money, Lu Shu called him a friend. When he could help Lu Shu earn a huge sum of money, he became Lu Shu's brother. So this is how you differentiate your relationship with others. However, Zhao Shuai did not show his unhappiness. He replied with a smile, "Brother, I have a huge surprise for you." The two of them acted like god brothers and did not hesitate at all. Lu Shu smiled. "How many sets of armor did you bring?" This time, Lu Yizhao used an invisible storage equipment. After he opened the invisible storage equipment, several thousands of armor appeared beside them. Zhao Shuai smiled. "Our collaboration went very well. We got an immeasurable amount of profits from 3 consecutive rounds of betting. Not only was everyone in the Weiwu army able to get their armor, but we also had leftover notes. Fortunately, the number of soldiers in the Weiwu army is quite little, or we may not have enough armor." Lu Shu nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the armor. He could deduce how much profit they earned from the amount of distress points obtained. He said to Lu Xiaoyu, "Register these and distribute them." The collaboration with the Song gambling den allowed everyone to profit. For Lu Shu, the biggest profit was none other than the distress points. At rank 1, he needed 10 million distress points to light up the first star. The stars after that would need hundreds of millions of distress points. Lu Shu had calculated roughly that the distress points he had could allow him to rise to a 4-star rank 1 after he broke free from the shackles. In the past, when one obtained the armor from the Black Feather Army, one had to find a matching armor based on their body size. Now, they did not have to do it as the magical armor was able to fit one's body. This time, the power of the Weiwu army had increased again. If the Black Feather Army surrounded them again, ordinary soldiers could not even harm the Weiwu army at all. "Are there any new bets recently?" asked Lu Shu happily. "We have to stop for a while," smiled Zhao Shuai. "Many of the scholars in the palace are against the gambling dens, and some of them are spreading the rumor that we are collaborating as the dealer. Therefore, there is not much significance in starting a new bet. Moreover, we have gotten enough money. Lu Shu was slightly disappointed. We sprang our attack too obviously. It was rather cruel to not have any casualties. We can't earn in this manner in the future, right? Not really. Zhao Shuai shook his head. Humans forget things easily. After a while, their greed will help them forget their loss. As long as we split the earnings fairly, they will continue placing their bets. Although the gamblers always say that they lose 9 out of 10 bets, how many people quit gambling? Everyone is waiting to get a comeback, right? That's right. Lu Shu smiled as he looked at Zhao Shuai. I look forward to working together with you in the future. Lu Shu thought that the Song Gambling Den was rather trustworthy. They might collaborate again in the future. Zhao Shuai laughed and took out a letter from the invisible storage equipment. The aristocrat from the Song family is willing to befriend you. If you ever head to the palace, take this letter and look for him. He will definitely be a great host. Lu Shu looked at the letter in his hand. There was neither a seal nor contents. It was a simple invitation card. This was probably the attractive deal given to Lu Shu by the Song family in the palace. However, Lu Shu did not like it. There was no sincerity at all. Lu Shu tossed the letter to Zhao Shuai. Let's not talk about whether we head to the palace or not. I think we should just stick with the dealing of money. Zhao Shuai was speechless. From Zhao Shuai's distress points, plus 666. At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly remembered the lady in a sakura kimono. He wondered how she was managing the collection of gods. Recalling the days on Earth, Lu Shu suddenly wanted to go back. It was only 4 months before the selection of the Sword Hut. Lu Shu should leave the Wei Wu army and head to the palace soon. He hoped that he could find his way home from the Sword Hut. However, Lu Shu was not sure because many people wanted to meet him in the palace after the gambling incident. Those people did not know that Lu Shu intended to participate in the selection of the Sword Hut in the palace. At this moment beside the Longyin River, a big group of middle-aged men stared at the surface of the river in despair. Suddenly, a young voice was heard, "Can those who are not committing suicide let the students go first?" The middle-aged gamblers moved aside immediately. Yes, please go first, we should not hold young people back no matter what. Meanwhile, the commander of the Black Feather Army was sitting quietly in the camp of the Weibei Pass. Just when the Qinglu Mountain made their harvest, he received information from the palace, including the information about the bet. He immediately understood why the Wei Wu army was behaving so strangely. They were King manipulating the bets. In fact, the act of the manipulation of the bets by the Wei Wu army had nothing to do with him. After all, he did not place any bets, so he did not care. However, in a month's time, the Wei Wu army attacked in all areas in favor of the bets. Half of the Black Feather Army in Yunnan City perished, but none of the soldiers in the Wei Wu army died in the battle in Nanning City. Initially, the Black Feather Army wanted to continue heading north after dealing with the battle. What King heading north? They had almost perished. The commander of the Black Feather Army was slightly panicky. He was worried that the palace would start a new bet. Could they stop starting new bets? They were killing the entire Black Feather Army by doing that.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.